And it's that kind of church trauma that causes people to leave that tradition and to look elsewhere or just be done with religion in general because they've been traumatized by the very church that's supposed to be helping them.
That's well, and I think that often can be true. But one of the things that's interesting about this history, about the history of, like, for example, the Syrian church or the Egyptian church, is that what's interesting is that even in the midst of all that persecution and in the midst of being told they're not real Christians because they don't say two natures, they say one, and all it's just a schism that really should not have happened. But despite that, that actually encouraged them to dig deeper into their own tradition and actually claim their own Egyptian Christian tradition or their own Syrian Christian tradition or their own Persian Christian tradition and reject the Roman church. So it's interesting because rather than rejecting, I think there's a lesson actually in this for a lot of modern Christians today, and this is why I was saying earlier how it can be helpful for people of color, especially Christians of color, who have to grapple with decolonization and church hurt and the complicitness of the church with Christian nationalism and all that kind of stuff. What's interesting is that in these ancient churches, they did not allow the oppression and the kind of overemphasis of theological and linguistic semantic nuance to ruin Jesus for them. They still clung tightly to Jesus and to their own tradition. And what they did is they rejected the Western church. They didn't reject the church. They didn't reject the gospel. They rejected the Western version of it. And they clung tighter to their own. And they basically said, we are Orthodox. We are the real Christians. We are the real church. This is what the Egyptian, the Ethiopian, the Syrian church said to themselves. And that was actually what helped them to weather the storm of European Christian oppression and then later Muslim oppression. And that is what has helped them survive even to this day. 1,400 years later, they are still alive and kicking, even though they're still being persecuted. They're still being martyred by their faith on beaches in Libya. They are still, the more they are persecuted, they get more passionate about it. They tattoo it on their wrists, on their foreheads. They let they do this in places where they can be killed for their faith in Jesus Christ. And I think it's a really strong testament, again, to many of us who, I think many of us need to learn from that kind of faith and that kind of resilience, because so often we will see things like the Capitol in January, and we will allow American exceptionalistic, white supremacist, oppressive expressions or really perversions of Christianity. We will allow that to speak for the Church of Jesus Christ, and we will think that that is the true representative. And then we will sometimes be tempted to, or as you said, reject the church on those grounds. But we have to learn from the Coptic and the Syrian faith of old and say, no. When we reject Trumpian Christianity, when we reject the Christianity of Charlottesville or the Christianity that invaded the Capitol, that's not even Christianity. So we're not rejecting the true Church of Jesus Christ. In fact, we cling tighter to the Church of Jesus Christ, the true Church of Jesus Christ that stands for justice and reconciliation and truth. And we reject an imperial kind of perversion of Christendom.
Hey, thank you so much for checking out this video clip from the Delgado podcast. To get more videos like this, simply subscribe here on YouTube. You can also download the full episode of each show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your favorite podcast player. Take care.